Did Donald Trump have a deeply thought-out strategy when he gave the go-ahead to the assassination of Qassem Soleimani? Or was it just on a whim? The answer is probably the latter, but we don't know. What we do know was that both Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama were given the opportunity to be rid of Soleimani when they were in office, and both decided against it. What we also know for sure is that the world is a more dangerous place today, thanks to Trump. Having promised revenge for Soleimani's death, the Iranians had little option but to react, hence the bombing of the 2 US bases in Iraq on Tuesday night. But if that's the end of their response, will Trump be seen to have won? And if they do react again, Trump will have little option but to hit back even harder. It is scary stuff. And the danger is that we end up with another Middle East war. The very thing that Trump promised he wouldn't get involved in when he stood in 2016. But then maybe that's what happens when you elect an unpredictable megalomaniac as President of the United States.
Greg, one-word answer. Did you agree with the killing of Osama bin Laden?
I can understand why they did it.
Wasn't
yes.
the answer? Do you understand?
Well, the answer is, could they have taken him and tried him? Right. I think that would have been very difficult, so I think probably yes.
You agree with that, right. So why wasn't that an assassination?
It was an assassination.
The assassination of Osama bin Laden as well?
Yes, it was an assassination.
He was an assassination. He was assassinated.
He was assassinated. No
Would you want
that
General Soleimani was still alive?
Well, what's interesting is that people who over the years could have had the opportunity to take him out, which were the Americans, but also the Israelis, up to now they've chosen not to.
Would you want him still alive?
I don't mind if either way.
You don't mind if he's still alive?
No,
so
no.
This is a man,
no, hang on. It's a judgment call, isn't it?
Well, this is a man who, in the eyes of the British Prime Minister, has the blood of British troops on his hands. There may well be people watching this who've lost limbs as a result of the activities that this man supported. Hold on. Also in the eyes of the United States. Also in the eyes of the United Nations, who've put a travel restriction on him and frozen his assets overseas because they see him as part of a terrorist organisation. So it's OK for the UK, it's OK for the US, it's OK for the United Nations. It was OK for your beloved Barack Obama to sanction a killing, but it's not OK for Donald Trump. Explain.
So I don't think it would have been OK for anyone to sanction the killing, but they clearly took a decision not to sanction his killing, and the Israelis in particular took a decision when they could have killed him not to kill him because they thought the impact and the effect of it will be too great, and that actually it could lead to war. And that's the judgment call you're making. I'm not necessarily saying that Trump was wrong. We will only know this.
Whoa.
We will only know this.
Sounded, respectfully, mate, it did sound like it.
Well, I think Trump is such a suspicious human being that you, as I was saying, was this a strategy or was it just a whim? And what worries me is it might have been just a whim, in which case I fear for what happens next.
Yeah, so I get the point you're making. Soleimani was a bad guy. He was responsible for American deaths. He was a very influential figure when Iran's been hijacking oil tankers, etc. But there's a slight difference. When Osama bin Laden was killed, it didn't result in thousands taking to the street screaming death to America. There was a very large consensus. They'll
say death to America for any reason you like. If they cancelled The Simpsons, they'd probably say that. Get in order. Come on, Femi.
I would also say this. In 2011, Donald Trump, he said that Barack Obama, he said, our president will attack Iran as the only way of getting re-elected because he has no strategy, he is pathetic. He predicted that in 2011 about Barack Obama, and he's done exactly that in an election year. To suggest that this was purely about protecting national security in America doesn't look likely.
Would you still want him alive, this bloke?
No, probably not.
Yeah, this guy is an absolute cancer, and I think he's got no business being around to inflict more and more misery, more attacks and more pain. When your key question is, did Donald Trump have a strategy?
Yeah.
The answer, most people would probably agree, is probably not. But even if he did have a strategy and he came and sat and did a one-to-one PowerPoint presentation with you, Greg, about what that strategy was, I still don't think you'd be happy with it. And the situation is, many people are just jumping on Donald Trump. He cannot do right right for doing wrong. And when you look at his supporter base, 84% of his supporter base of Republican voters actually agree with this strike.
Which is exactly why he did it.
Of course.
As his impeachment is ongoing.
My worry about all of this, and I agree with you in the sense of I don't think it was thought through, it's all well and good cutting out the head of this cancer in these regions, but what happens, and we see it time and time again, you take this head off, and then what's left, what bubbles beneath, is you've got all of these different factions that are absolute poison, that now who's going to control them, who's going to contain them, and what's going to happen next? And that is my worry. And as we all hope, I really hope that this doesn't lead to escalation, but I also think we have to be realistic, because you just said the world today is undoubtedly a more scarier or dangerous place because of this action, and I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that.
I think it's still debated whether it was illegal, you know, whether drone strike of a foreign leader on foreign soil is illegal or legal. That is being debated. The UN has said already that this drone strike was probably an illegal assassination. Clearly, Qassem Soleimani was not one of the good guys. It's good, you know, he caused untold damage in Syria as well, because he marshalled all the Shiite, offences
and
Hezbollah, of course,
and on and on and on.
And having said that, you know, we're all sitting here being armchair generals deciding whether a good thing or a bad thing. I think Greg is right. I mean, this hasn't made the world a safer place. Look at what happened in the Middle East, those tens of thousands of people chanting death to America. You know, no America is now safe in Iraq or Iran. But let's hear from an actual general rather than us.
I hope that this is a tactical incident and not a strategic one. But my bones tell me this could very well be strategic, that indeed the next escalation could be such that the United States has no choice but to respond with more force. That's a slippery slope to war, and that's what I'm worried about. This precedent is killing other recognized representatives of state governments. That's not a good precedent to have set.
Well, I think we won't know for weeks, months, years whether Donald Trump acted to stop or start a war. We know what Trump says, but I'm afraid I think I'm with the General Wilkerson there.
And let's look at the reaction from, for example, Hezbollah.
The response to the blood of Qassem Soleimani and Abu Mahdi will be to oust the American troops from our entire region. The American military bases, the American military ships, every American officer or soldier in our countries and our territories. The American army killed those, and it will pay the price.
The thing is, Trump, what he's
we don't do something because we want to offend Hezbollah.
No.
Serious?
I'm not making.
Is that the best you've bloody well got?
I'm not making that point. I'm making the point that
the
general reaction, including Hezbollah.
Oh my God, we've upset Hezbollah.
To someone like Trump, is that you have a crazy American leader who's willing to do.
And this guy was Mother Teresa, was he?
No. Let's have a bit of perspective here. What did Donald Trump say on Twitter? He said that he would be willing to disproportionately react, i.e., go beyond what would be reasonable in terms of his reaction to Iran. He said he'd be willing to bomb cultural sites, which is a war crime.
Utterly absurd.
I mean, let's just for a second turn the tables around, turn every single factor around, and pretend like someone like Trump was in Iran.
Hold on, let me finish.
Follow me for a second. Let's say you had somebody in a Middle Eastern country, as a leader of a Middle Eastern country, who had nuclear weapons, was talking about hitting America harder and faster, talking about responding disproportionately, bombing American cultural sites, who most people, even in that country, considered him to be racist against, well, in that case, white people. We would bomb that country into the dust. What Donald Trump is doing right now...
My granny had wheels, she'd be a bus. Where does that end?
What Donald Trump is doing right now is showing the world that he is crazy, and that makes the entire situation a lot more volatile.
I was in the States over Christmas and New Year, and just talking to loads of people, there is a feeling I got from... Now, I disproportionately know Democrats, right? But there is a feeling that they think this guy is nuts.
Who?
Trump.
Right. That they genuinely
think... What do you mean, who, Nick?
Yes, that they genuinely think that there is not... But I want to ask you a question.
Go on.
Were you in favour of the Iraq war?
Initially, yes, and I was misled, and then I was against it.
And now, now you look back and you think that was a
terrible
disaster.
chapter in British history.
British and American, mainly American. It would have happened without the British. It would have mainly happened. And that's the sort of decision-making I'm talking about, that you don't know whether this decision is... what will be the Iranian reaction over time to this.
So you never stand up to a bully?
But why has no one stood up to him over the last 20 years?
You'd have to
I've
ask
got
them.
to another matter of serious global significance.